The Hartmere Sapphire is gone, and my wife is the thief. The Duke of Hartmere spoke before 200 guests, then ordered the guards to remove Lady Helena's ducal coronet. For one suspended moment, no one in the great gallery moved. Candlelight flashed against the empty gold setting, displayed upon a square of black velvet. Where the famous blue stone should have rested, 4 naked claws curled around a hollow space. Helena felt every gaze turn toward her. Her husband stood beneath the Hartmere coat of arms, one hand resting beside the accusation he had already signed. Alistair's expression was hard, but not uncertain. That wounded her more deeply than the words themselves. He had not called her forward to ask a question. He had assembled witnesses to pronounce a sentence. Captain Rowe approached her with visible reluctance. "My lady, I must ask you to surrender the coronet." Helena lifted her chin. "Then do it gently. It belonged to the duchess before me, and she was innocent of tonight's spectacle." A murmur passed through the gallery. Captain Rowe removed the small diamond coronet from Helena's dark hair. Without its weight, she felt strangely exposed, as though her marriage itself had been lifted away before the court. Lady Verena Ashcombe watched from beside the Duke's chair. She wore ivory silk, although she was neither a bride nor the mistress of Hartmere House. Around her throat lay the late Duchess's pearls, which Alistair had permitted her to borrow for the evening. Verena lowered her eyes when Helena looked at her, but the curve at the corner of her mouth remained. Alistair addressed the guests. "The sapphire was last inspected 3 days ago. Only my wife, my steward, and I possessed keys to the jewel chamber. The steward's key has remained sealed in the estate office. Mine has not left my person." "And mine," Helena asked, "was found in your writing desk beside a receipt from a London broker." Mr. Bellamy, the steward, raised the paper so the room could see Helena's name written across its bottom. The signature resembled hers. It possessed the same long first stroke and the same narrow loop in the final letter. But whoever had copied it had never watched Helena write in haste. The imitation was too graceful. "You could have compared that receipt with my household orders," she said. "I requested it this afternoon. I compared it with your letters to your mother. You compared nothing. Bellamy did it for you." The steward stiffened. Alistair's jaw tightened. "Take care, Helena." There it was, the warning he used whenever truth threatened to become socially inconvenient. 6 months earlier, Helena had shown him unexplained gaps in the estate accounts. Alistair had promised to examine them, but Bellamy convinced him that his wife was interfering in matters beyond her place. Then Verena arrived. She listened whenever Alistair complained that Helena questioned him too often. She praised the certainty Helena disturbed and offered admiration where his wife offered uncomfortable truth. Gradually, Alistair stopped bringing Helena his concerns. Then he stopped reading her reports. Finally, he began treating Verena's agreement as loyalty and Helena's honesty as defiance. Tonight he had completed that betrayal before 200 witnesses. Tonight he had chosen the same comfort again. "If you believed I stole it," Helena said, "why invite half of London to witness my disgrace?" A flush climbed his neck. For an instant, she saw the man who had once trusted her to identify a flawed emerald when 3 celebrated dealers had failed. Then Verena touched his sleeve. "Your Grace," she murmured, "the prince's representative will arrive tomorrow. The matter cannot remain hidden." Alistair looked at her, and his hesitation disappeared. "Lady Helena will be confined to the East Apartments until the magistrate examines the evidence. Her household authority is suspended. Until this matter is settled, Lady Verena will supervise the servants and secure the family collection." Helena heard the true sentence beneath the formal words. Verena would control the jewel chamber. By sunrise, Helena would lose her rooms, her allowance, and access to the workshop where she had quietly repaired the family jewels for 6 years. More dangerously, every ledger, tool, and unfinished inventory she had kept there would pass into Verena's hands. "Do not give her my workshop key," Helena said. Alistair's eyes narrowed. "You are no longer in a position to issue commands. I am warning you. And I am tired of mistaking your defiance for wisdom." The words struck with the intimacy of a slap. Helena removed the ring of household keys from her waist and laid it upon the velvet beside the empty setting. The smallest key opened her workbench. Verena's gaze settled upon it immediately. That single glance steadied Helena. She leaned closer to the necklace. The setting had been fashioned almost 80 years earlier, when jewelers used heavier claws to secure valuable stones. Helena knew every repair made to it, including the tiny reinforcement she had added beneath the lower right prong. Now 3 fresh scratches crossed the gold beneath the upper claw. They were parallel, narrow, and too precise to have been made by a knife. Her father had taught her those marks when she was 12. They came from a specialized lifting tool used to loosen a gemstone without cracking its edge. Someone had opened this setting professionally. Yet one scratch lay beneath a thin layer of polishing rouge, while the other 2 remained bright. The stone had been removed, the setting polished, and then opened again. The sapphire had been replaced once before its supposed theft. Helena looked toward the steward. Bellamy was watching Verena instead of the necklace. Verena's fingers had tightened around Alistair's sleeve. "My father taught me what these marks mean," Helena said. Alistair exhaled impatiently. "This is not your father's shop." No, in his shop, a customer making an accusation was required to hear the answer. She turned the setting slightly beneath the candlelight. A faint line of blue glimmered inside the lowest claw, not sapphire, but residue left by colored glass. Her pulse quickened. The stone displayed at Hartmere during the previous month had already been false. Someone had stolen the true sapphire earlier, replaced it with an imitation, and removed that imitation tonight, so Helena could be accused of taking the original. The missing jewel was only part of the crime. "Your Grace," Captain Rowe said quietly, "should the necklace be sealed for the magistrate?" Verena answered before Alistair could. "I will secure it with the remaining collection." "No," Helena said. Every face turned toward her again. She met her husband's eyes, giving him one final opportunity to pause. "Send for Mr. Alderton, the royal jeweler. Let him examine the setting before anyone touches it. If I am wrong, I will walk to the east apartments without another word." "Mr. Alderton is in Bath," Bellamy said quickly. Helena looked at him. She had not mentioned where the jeweler might be. Alistair noticed the mistake. His gaze shifted toward the steward, but Verena stepped between them. "This is another delay," she said. "The prince's exhibition opens tomorrow at noon. Every jewel must be prepared tonight." Helena understood then. Whoever had arranged her disgrace needed the entire Hartmere collection placed beyond scrutiny before noon. She looked back at her husband. "If you send me away tonight, you will never learn which sapphire was actually stolen." Alistair's face changed, but before he could answer, a footman rushed into the gallery, carrying a rain-spattered silver tray. Upon it lay a sealed royal command. The footman bowed shakily. "Your Grace, a messenger has arrived from Carlton House. By order of the Crown, the Hartmere Sapphire and every jewel stored beside it must be surrendered for inspection at 9 tomorrow morning." Across the gallery, Verena's composure finally broke. But it was Bellamy who slipped his hand inside his coat. Captain Rowe caught Bellamy's wrist before the steward could draw his hand from inside his coat. A small glass vial slipped between Bellamy's fingers, struck the marble floor, and shattered. Clear liquid spread toward the black velvet display. Helena moved before anyone else understood. She snatched the necklace from the velvet and lifted it beyond the creeping liquid. A sharp mineral odor rose from the floor. "Do not touch it," she warned. Bellamy's face had gone grey. "Medicine for my heart." "Then you carry a dangerous remedy," Helena replied. "That is aqua fortis. It will eat into gold and destroy the marks inside the setting." The royal messenger stood motionless at the gallery entrance, the sealed command still resting upon his tray. Around him, the guests drew back from Bellamy, as though guilt itself might stain their shoes. Alistair stared at the broken vial. "Why would my steward destroy evidence proving my wife's crime?" Bellamy recovered quickly. "I reached for my spectacles, Your Grace. The vial broke by accident." "Your spectacles are in your breast pocket," Helena said. Your hand was inside the other side of your coat. Verena released the Duke's sleeve. She did it slowly, careful not to appear startled, but Helena saw her glance toward the eastern doors. 2 footmen stood there. Another guarded the gallery entrance. For the moment, neither Verena nor Bellamy could leave unnoticed. Captain Rowe tightened his grip upon the steward. "Shall I search him?" Alistair hesitated. That hesitation told Helena how deeply Bellamy's authority had become woven into the estate. The steward managed the rents, paid the servants, and carried Alistair's private correspondence to London. Questioning him would mean questioning years of convenient trust. "Search him," Helena said. "You do not command my officers," Alistair snapped. "No," she replied, holding the necklace safely above the ruined velvet. "I merely recognize the moment before another piece of evidence disappears." The royal messenger cleared his throat. His Royal Highness's command requires the collection to remain intact from the moment of delivery. Any attempt to alter or remove an item must be reported. Alistair's pride lost its struggle with royal necessity. "Search him." Captain Rowe found a ring of keys, a folding knife, 2 sealed letters, and a second vial containing dark polishing paste. He also discovered a narrow silver instrument with 2 curved tips. Helena recognized it immediately. "A stone lifter." Bellamy forced a laugh. "A household steward may possess tools." "Not that one." Helena examined the handle without touching it. "The grip has been wrapped in green cord. Mr. Alderton marks every tool used by his senior craftsman that way." Alistair looked toward her. "You are certain?" "I trained in my father's shop from the age of 9. By 14, I could grade diamonds. At 17, I discovered that a Portuguese dealer had replaced 3 Burmese rubies with garnets. You knew all of this when you married me." A memory passed between them. During their first winter together, Alistair had brought her a damaged emerald brooch and watched in fascination as she repaired its hinge. He had called her hands miraculous. Later, when his mother's neglected collection began losing stones from weakened settings, Helena had restored each piece without charging the estate a penny. Now those same hands were being treated as instruments of theft. "Why did you never tell me the Hartmere Sapphire had been removed before tonight?" he asked. "I did not know. You stopped allowing me to inspect the ceremonial collection 5 weeks ago." At that, his expression shifted. Bellamy had told him Helena's repeated inspections made the household appear financially desperate. Verena had supported the argument, claiming rumors were already circulating that Hartmere intended to sell its jewels. Alistair had ordered the cases sealed until the royal exhibition. He had removed the one person capable of detecting the substitution. Helena saw realization touch him, but pride covered it almost immediately. The tool could have been planted upon Bellamy as easily as the broker's receipt was supposedly planted in your desk. Verena's voice was gentle. "And Lady Helena had access to the steward's coat before dinner. I saw her speaking with him near the library." Helena turned to her. "I asked why 3 tenant pensions had not been paid. An argument that provided an opportunity. An argument that provided him a motive to silence me." Bellamy raised his chin. "The pension fund is delayed because her ladyship repeatedly changed the distribution lists." Helena looked toward the assembled servants. Near the rear stood Mrs. Finch, the housekeeper, twisting her apron between her fingers. "Bring me the blue household book from my sitting room," Helena said. Verena smiled faintly. "Your rooms have been sealed." "Then open them in Captain Rowe's presence." Alistair's voice hardened. "What does a household book have to do with the sapphire?" "It records every piece of jewelry removed for cleaning, every servant assigned to the jewel chamber, and every payment I authorized for repairs. It will also show that I saved this estate more than £12,000 in 6 years by identifying false invoices." The number produced another murmur. Alistair looked stunned. He had received reports of reduced expenses, but Bellamy had presented those savings as the result of his own disciplined management. Helena continued. "It also records that Bellamy requested access to the ceremonial cases 5 weeks ago, the morning after you forbade me from inspecting them." Bellamy's confidence cracked. That entry is false. Then you should welcome its examination. Mrs. Finch stepped forward before fear could stop her. I witnessed it, Your Grace. Her ladyship would not give him the jewel-room key unless I stood beside them. She said no man should enter alone while the collection was being prepared. Helena met the housekeeper's eyes. Mrs. Finch had supported her long before tonight, not from strategy, but because Helena had protected the servants' wages during 2 poor harvests. Alistair stared at Bellamy. You told me my wife had surrendered the key willingly. She did. No, Helena said. I surrendered nothing. I permitted one supervised inspection because you ordered me to cooperate. The Duke's gaze dropped to the key ring upon the velvet. Helena recognized the smallest key immediately. Its handle bore a tiny crescent-shaped file mark she had made years earlier. But something was wrong. She held her hand above it. Captain, do not allow anyone to touch that workshop key. Alistair frowned. You placed it there yourself. I placed a brass key there. That one is iron beneath a thin coating of gold. Captain Rowe tested it with the magnetized tip of his compass. The key jumped toward it. Verena inhaled sharply. Helena looked at the sealed eastern doors, then at the false key lying where hers had been. My real workshop key was exchanged before I entered this gallery. A violent crash sounded from the floor above. Smoke began curling beneath the ceiling. Mrs. Finch turned toward the staircase and screamed. Her ladyship's workshop is on fire. Helena thrust the necklace into Captain Rowe's hands and ran. Smoke rolled down the upper corridor before she reached the staircase. Servants scattered as flames pulsed behind the workshop door, turning its glass panels orange. My ledgers are inside, she said. Alistair caught her arm. You are not entering a burning room. My father's records are in the lower cabinet, and you will die before reaching them. She tore free of him and seized the small axe mounted beside the servant's stair. Instead of striking the door, she brought it down upon the narrow panel beside the lock. Alistair swore. Helena! The ceiling vent feeds the fire. If we open the door first, the draft will carry it into the corridor. She broke through the panel, reached inside, and dragged the brass lever downward. A metal shutter groaned closed above the workshop chimney. The flames shrank almost at once. Helena had designed the ventilation system after a lamp overturned there 3 years earlier. Bellamy had dismissed the expense as an indulgence. Tonight, it kept the east wing from burning. Now, she ordered. Captain Rowe kicked the door open while 2 footmen emptied sand buckets across the floor. Alistair pulled down a burning curtain with his coat. Within minutes, the remaining flames hissed into darkness. The workshop had been attacked with precision. The fire had begun beneath Helena's central table, where her jewelry records were usually kept. Her cabinet doors stood open. Drawers had been overturned, but no silver tools or valuable stones had been taken. Someone had come for paper. Helena knelt beside the lower cabinet. Its outer panels were blackened, yet the interior remained cool. She removed a shallow iron box containing the notebooks her father had left her. They were safe. Alistair wiped soot from his cheek. If the records were here, why did you say the blue household book was in your sitting room? Because I wanted to see who would try to destroy it. He stared at her. You used my house as a trap. I knew Bellamy had stolen my key. I did not know whether he wanted the workshop or wished to make me appear responsible for whatever happened here. And if the fire had spread? It did not, because I prepared for dangers your steward insisted did not exist. His expression tightened, but he had no answer. Near the broken window, Helena found the true workshop key lying among scattered glass. A strip of pale fabric was caught around its stem. The cloth was coarse and grey-brown, not something worn by a lady or household servant. A deliveryman's sleeve, perhaps. Beside it lay a small wooden matchbox, printed with the crest of the White Hart Inn. It was an ordinary object, sold by the dozen to travellers, yet Helena remembered seeing the same red stag upon a parcel delivered to Bellamy 2 nights earlier. She wrapped the matchbox and fabric in a clean square of linen. Captain Rowe joined her. There are footprints beneath the window. One man entered from the roof passage and left through the door. Then someone unlocked it from outside after the key was exchanged. Lady Verena appeared in the doorway, holding a handkerchief over her mouth. Thank heaven no one was injured. She stepped toward the damaged work table. Helena blocked her path. You have no authority in this room. The Duke placed the household in my care. The royal command has frozen the collection and everything related to it. Until the inspection is complete, this workshop is evidence. Verena looked toward Alistair. He paused before saying, "My wife is correct." The words were reluctant, but they marked Helena's first small victory of the night. Verena's smile remained. Her eyes did not. "Of course, I only wished to help." "You can help by explaining why you told the guests Mr. Alderton was in Bath," Helena said. "I said no such thing. Bellamy did, but you did not appear surprised." Verena lowered her handkerchief. "Everyone in society knows Mr. Alderton attends the Bath Assembly each summer. Not this week. He postponed his journey because the Crown requested an inspection." Alistair turned sharply. "How do you know that?" "He wrote to me yesterday. And you did not tell me." The letter was addressed to the person responsible for preparing the Hartmere collection. Until tonight, that person was supposedly me. The rebuke landed cleanly. Verena moved closer to the Duke. "This does not change the evidence found in Helena's desk, nor does it explain why she concealed the earlier substitution." "I could not conceal what your friends prevented me from inspecting," Helena said. "My friends?" "Lord Crofton recommended Bellamy's assistant. His secretary arranged the London broker named upon the false receipt. You arrived at Hartmere carrying Crofton's written assurance, and within 5 weeks I had been excluded from the jewel chamber." Alistair's face hardened. "You are turning political connections into a conspiracy because you resent Verena's presence. Then explain the timing." "I can explain it," Verena said. "Helena learned the collection would be inspected. She replaced the sapphire months ago, then removed the imitation before an expert could expose her. Tonight's fire was meant to destroy the records of her access. The accusation was elegant because it used every discovered fact while reversing its meaning." Alistair looked around the damaged workshop. The false receipt, the key hidden in Helena's desk, and the fire in her private room still formed a convincing picture, if one ignored Bellamy's tool and the acid. His doubt had awakened, but wounded pride pushed it back to sleep. "You knew about the royal inspection," he said to Helena. "That gave you a reason to act tonight." She felt something inside her become still. "You would rather believe I burned my father's notebooks than admit that you handed authority to people you never examined." "I believe evidence." "No, you believe whatever protects your opinion of yourself." For a heartbeat, shame crossed his face. Then a footman entered carrying the blue household book, its leather cover damp from smoke but intact. "I found this beneath the cushion in Lady Helena's sitting room," he said. Verena looked directly at Helena. The book had not been there. Helena opened it. Several pages had been cut out, including the record of Bellamy's visit to the jewel chamber. In their place lay a folded letter written in Helena's hand. It instructed a London dealer to sell the Hartmere Sapphire and transfer the money to her mother. Alistair read it twice. The colour drained from his face. Helena examined the ink, then touched one corner of the paper. A faint trace of lavender oil clung to it, the same fragrance Verena used upon her gloves. Verena noticed Helena's reaction. Their eyes met, and Helena saw the truth behind the other woman's composure. Verena was no longer merely trying to discredit her. She was afraid Helena could prove how it had been done. Before Helena could speak, Verena reached past her and pointed to the final line. "There is your wife's confession, Your Grace." Helena looked at the copied signature. This time, the forger had reproduced even the hurried imperfection missing from the broker's receipt. Someone had obtained a recent sample of her private writing, and that meant the theft had begun much closer to her than she had imagined. Helena held the forged letter closer to the lamp. The copied signature was nearly flawless because the forger had not worked from her formal correspondence. They had copied something written quickly, under pressure, with no expectation that anyone would preserve it. She turned toward Mrs. Finch. "The kitchen advances." The housekeeper understood at once. Your notes authorizing emergency wages. For years, Helena had kept small cards in her writing desk, permitting servants to receive part of their pay early during illness or family hardship. She wrote them rapidly, often while managing several household problems at once. Who collected one recently? Helena asked. Mrs. Finch hesitated. Lucy Vale. Her mother required a surgeon. A young maid near the doorway began trembling. Verena glanced at her. It lasted no more than a second, but Helena saw the warning. Lucy, Helena said gently, come here. The girl stepped forward with tears already gathering in her eyes. I gave you an advance last Tuesday. What happened to the card? I handed it to Mr. Bellamy's assistant in the estate office. Did he return it after paying you? No, my lady. Did you receive the full amount? Lucy's silence answered first. Mrs. Finch moved beside her. Speak the truth, child. Only half. Mr. Pike said the rest had been taken for household charges. Helena felt anger rise, cold and focused. There are no charges upon emergency wages. Bellamy attempted to step forward, but Captain Rowe held him back. Lady Helena is confusing an accounting disagreement with theft, the steward said. No, I am showing where the forger obtained my hurried signature. She compared the letter with a second wage card Mrs. Finch carried in the household book. The same compressed loop appeared at the end of Helena's name. Even Alistair could see the resemblance. Yet Verena's voice remained smooth. Or Lucy helped Helena create a false trail. The maid recoiled as though struck. Lucy cannot imitate my hand, Helena said. She reads only simple household labels. Verena gave a sorrowful smile. Then perhaps her ladyship selected her because she could not understand what she carried. The danger shifted immediately. If the forged documents were accepted as Helena's work, Lucy could be accused as her accomplice and dismissed without a character. No respectable household would employ her again. Helena looked toward her husband. Give the girl your protection until the investigation is complete. Alistair's expression was guarded. If she is involved. She came forward when silence would have been safer. I will not permit you to punish courage merely because it complicates your accusation. You are hardly in a position to permit anything. Then I will assume responsibility for her wages from my separate allowance. Your allowance has been suspended. Helena removed the pearl and garnet bracelet from her wrist and placed it in Mrs. Finch's hand. My father made this. Sell it only if necessary. Lucy remains under your protection. The young maid began to cry. Helena did not comfort her with promises she might not be able to keep. She simply closed Mrs. Finch's fingers around the bracelet. Alistair watched, visibly unsettled. Helena had once sold another piece from her father's shop to purchase winter grain after Bellamy claimed the estate accounts could not support both tenant relief and roof repairs. The harvest had recovered, rents had stabilized, and Alistair had later praised Bellamy for preventing unrest. He had never asked who had paid for the grain. A shout rose from the courtyard. The north gate is closed, a groom called from below. The jewel wagon cannot pass. Helena crossed to the broken window. In the smoke-lit yard, horses reared before an iron gate that had jammed halfway open. The royal command required the collection to leave by 8 in the morning. If the wagon missed its appointed escort, Hartmere would be reported for obstructing the crown. The lower hinge has dropped, she said. Alistair came beside her. You cannot see that from here. I can see the gate leaning toward the stone post. The hinge pin has sheared. Bellamy had delayed repairs to the old ironwork despite Helena's written warnings. Now the entire collection could be trapped inside the estate. The West Service Road, Alistair said. Flooded. Bellamy diverted the drainage crews last month. Alistair looked at the steward. Is that true? Bellamy's mouth tightened. The men were needed elsewhere. Helena was already moving. In the courtyard, she ordered the grooms to unhitch the horses and bring 2 stable jacks. She had learned metal balance beside her father, who repaired not only jewelry, but locks, hinges, and delicate clockwork. A gate and a brooch obeyed the same principle. Pressure must be removed before the damaged joint could be freed. Raise the outer corner 1 inch, she instructed. No more. The men obeyed. Helena slid a carriage bolt through the empty hinge barrel, then used a horseshoe nail to secure it temporarily. The gate opened. The servants cheered. Alistair descended the steps, just as Verena reached the courtyard, with several guests behind her. "What extraordinary foresight," she announced. "His Grace ordered the gate repaired before the royal escort arrived." The cheering faltered. Helena turned slowly. Alistair could have corrected the lie with 6 words. Instead, conscious of the watching nobles and anxious to preserve his authority, he said, "The important matter is that the road is open." Verena had stolen Helena's achievement before the mud had dried upon her hands, and Alistair had allowed it. Helena wiped the grease from her fingers. "Yes, your authority has been rescued again. How fortunate for it." He flinched. Captain Rowe approached with the sealed letters found in Bellamy's coat. "One is addressed to Lord Crofton, the other bears no name." "Open them," Helena said. Alistair took the unnamed letter, but stopped when Verena objected. Private correspondence cannot simply be read because Helena demands it. "It was carried by a man holding acid beside royal evidence," Helena replied. Captain Rowe offered Alistair a small paper knife. This was his chance, not to believe Helena blindly, but to examine what he had refused to examine before condemning her. He broke the seal. The page inside contained only 4 lines. It ordered Bellamy to deliver the Blue Heart and its companions to a warehouse at Blackwall before 9 the following morning. Payment would be released after the objects left British waters. The message was unsigned. At the bottom sat a thumbprint in dark red sealing wax. Mrs. Finch stared at it. "I have seen that wax before." Every head turned toward her. She pointed at Verena's ivory reticule. "Lady Verena sealed 3 letters with it in her ladyship's sitting room yesterday." Verena did not move. Alistair looked from the red wax to the woman he had placed in control of his household. Then she reached into her reticule and calmly placed an identical stick of wax in his hand.
"Search my rooms," she said. "If Helena believes I planned this theft, let her discover what I have been hiding."
The challenge was too confident. Helena understood why a moment later. Verena wanted them to search. Helena caught Captain Rowe's arm before he could lead the search. "Seal Verena's rooms first. No one enters until the royal jeweler arrives." Verena gave a soft laugh. "You accused me, Helena. Now you are afraid of what we may find." "I am afraid of what you prepared for us to find." Alistair looked between them. Exhaustion had sharpened his features, but anger still governed him more strongly than doubt. "We search now," he ordered. "Captain, take 2 witnesses." They crossed the east corridor together. Verena's rooms had once belonged to Alistair's widowed aunt, but Verena had filled them with pale silk, silver mirrors, and flowers sent daily by Lord Crofton. Captain Rowe unlocked the bedroom. Nothing appeared disturbed. The wardrobe held expensive gowns. The desk contained invitations and ordinary correspondence. An open bottle of lavender oil stood beside Verena's gloves. Then Mrs. Finch noticed soot beneath a travel trunk near the fireplace. That trunk was not here this afternoon. Verena turned toward her. "Are you certain?" "I supervised the chambermaids myself." Captain Rowe opened it. Inside lay 3 velvet jewel cases bearing the Hartmere crest. The first contained a diamond riviere Helena had restored the previous winter. The second held a pair of ruby clasps intended for the royal exhibition. The third was empty, shaped precisely for the Hartmere Sapphire. Beneath the cases lay Helena's missing workshop key, several sheets of her private stationery, and a bundle of letters tied with dark blue ribbon. Alistair opened the first letter. It was addressed to Helena from a London broker. It confirmed the sale of the sapphire and promised passage to France once the remaining pieces arrived. Helena did not need to examine the signature to understand the trap. Verena had invited the search because the room had been made to appear as a place Helena secretly used. "She placed these here," Helena said. Verena's face crumpled with convincing distress. "Why would I hide stolen jewels in my own bedroom?" Because you knew we would search it, or because you have entered my rooms whenever you pleased. I have not crossed this threshold since you arrived. Your key was found inside the trunk. The key stolen before tonight. Verena looked at Alistair with tears shining in her eyes. She meant to accuse me after the collection disappeared. These cases would be discovered, and everyone would believe I had betrayed you. It was a clever lie, because it gave Helena an apparent reason to plant every piece of evidence. Captain Rowe examined the trunk's brass lock. No sign of force. Who owns the trunk? Helena asked. Verena touched the initials engraved upon its lid. H.A.H. They belonged to Helena Ann Hartmere. Helena recognized it then. The trunk had vanished from the attic 2 months earlier. Bellamy had claimed it was damaged and discarded. Verena stepped backward as though horrified. Then Helena brought it here. No, Mrs. Finch said. 2 of Mr. Bellamy's men carried it upstairs after dinner. They told the servants it contained Lady Verena's winter gowns. Bellamy's confidence finally collapsed. An old woman's memory is unreliable. Mrs. Finch's face reddened, but Helena moved between her and the steward. Do not threaten another servant. I threatened no one. You withheld Lucy's wages, falsified the pension accounts, entered the jewel chamber, carried a royal jeweller's stolen tool, and attempted to destroy the setting. How many facts must my husband refuse to see before refusal becomes participation? Alistair's face went white. Verena seized the moment. She is trying to turn you against every loyal person in this house. If the jewels miss the royal inspection tomorrow, Hartmere will be disgraced. Lord Crofton has already arranged secure transportation to Carlton House. His men are waiting at the South Lodge. Helena's alarm sharpened. The royal command named its own escort. The escort has been delayed, Verena replied. A bridge collapsed on the London road. How could Crofton know that before the messenger? Alistair ignored the question. If the royal wagon cannot reach us, Crofton's guards may be the only way to meet the deadline. The unsigned letter orders the jewels to Blackwall, not Carlton House. Bellamy carried that letter. Crofton did not write it. Then wait for Alderton. He can identify the tool, inspect the false stone residue, and verify whether these letters were written with my ink. We do not have time. You have until 9. And if you are wrong, the Crown receives nothing. Alistair's political future stood before him like a hungry creature. Lord Crofton had promised him a cabinet appointment if the exhibition succeeded. A delay would humiliate him before the prince, while trusting Helena required him to admit that his public accusation had been reckless. He walked to Verena's desk and pulled a fresh sheet of paper toward him. Helena watched him dip the pen. What are you signing? Authority for Crofton's men to transport the collection. That is exactly what this scheme requires. It is what duty requires. No, duty would require you to examine the truth before surrendering what you are sworn to protect. His hand stopped. For one fragile moment, Helena believed he might finally listen. Then Verena whispered, if she escapes tonight, every jewel will vanish with her. Alistair finished his signature. He authorized Crofton's guards to take possession of the entire Hartmere collection at dawn. Beneath that order, he signed a second document placing Helena under formal arrest for felony theft and attempted destruction of evidence. Captain Rowe read it and looked sick. Helena removed her wedding ring. She placed it beside Alistair's pen. You have chosen twice tonight, she said. Do not later claim you were never given the chance to choose differently. Something broke behind his eyes, but he did not withdraw either order. Captain Rowe escorted Helena toward the east apartments. She did not look back at her husband. As they passed the servants' stair, Lucy slipped from the shadows and pressed a folded scrap into Helena's palm. I heard Mr. Pike speaking at the stable door, the maid whispered. The wagons are not waiting until dawn. Helena opened the paper. It was a loading list for 12 crates, far more than the Hartmere collection required. Beside the final entry stood the name of a ship sailing from Blackwall on the morning tide. Departure, 6 o'clock. The jewels would be beyond English waters 3 hours before the Crown came to inspect them. Helena folded the loading list into her sleeve before Captain Rowe could see it. Not because she distrusted him, but because Alistair's arrest order now bound him. If she openly revealed what Lucy had given her, the captain might be compelled to surrender it to the very men preparing the theft. "Take me to the East Apartments," Helena said. Lucy stared at her in disbelief. Helena gave the girl a slight nod. "Trust me." Captain Rowe locked Helena inside the former schoolroom and stationed a guard outside. The windows overlooked the south courtyard, where lanterns were already moving between the stable and the jewel wing. Helena waited until his footsteps faded. Then she removed a thin steel pin from the hem of her gown. Her father had taught her to open a damaged lock without breaking its internal springs. The schoolroom mechanism was old and simple. Within 2 minutes, the bolt yielded. The guard outside had left his post to investigate shouting from below. Helena descended the back stair and found Mrs. Finch in the linen passage. "Wake the senior servants," Helena said. Quietly, "No one is to confront Crofton's men. Remove the children, the elderly staff, and every lamp from the north corridor." "Are they taking the jewels?" "They are taking more than jewels." Helena showed her the loading list. The 12 crates were labelled as household silver, ceremonial plate, paintings and private archives. Lord Crofton's men intended to empty Hartmere House under the authority of Alistair's own signature. "They cannot carry the paintings through the jewel wing door," Mrs. Finch said. "They do not intend to. The crates were packed before tonight." Helena remembered the Red Stag matchbox from the White Hart Inn. A coaching inn with a large rear yard could conceal wagons and packed crates without attracting notice. The robbery had been unfolding for months. Valuable objects were quietly replaced, moved to the White Hart Inn, and packed for shipment. Alistair's transfer order would now allow the thieves to carry them away openly. His betrayal of Helena had not merely removed his wife. It had removed Hartmere's last defence. "What can we do?" Mrs. Finch asked. "Protect the people first. Then send a stable boy to Mr. Alderton's London residence and another to Bow Street. They must travel separately. You are under arrest, so make certain no one sees you obey me." In the courtyard, 6 armed men wearing Lord Crofton's colours presented Alistair's signed order to Captain Rowe. Their leader demanded the keys to the jewel chamber. Alistair stood beside the wagon, fully dressed, despite the soot upon his collar. "You said your men were waiting at the South Lodge," he told Verena. "They came early, when they heard the royal escort was delayed. Who informed them?" "Lord Crofton plans for every possibility." Helena stepped from beneath the archway. Mr. Sayer saw her first. "The prisoner is loose." Captain Rowe turned, frustration and relief crossing his face together. Alistair strode toward her. "Have you lost all sense? The loading order lists 12 crates. The Hartmere jewels fill 3. Verena's expression did not change. The additional crates contain protective equipment. Helena approached the nearest wagon. Its wheels sank deeply into the courtyard mud, although its visible crates appeared empty. She struck the side of one crate with her knuckles. The sound was dull, not hollow. "Open it," she said. The leader of Crofton's guards rested one hand upon his pistol. "These goods are sealed under his lordship's authority. They remain upon Hartmere land," Alistair said. "Open it." The man looked toward Verena before obeying. Captain Rowe broke the seal and raised the lid. Inside lay silver candlesticks, gold cups, 2 carved reliquaries from the Hartmere chapel, and bundles of estate bonds taken from Alistair's private archive. Alistair stared into the crate. "I saw those candlesticks at dinner." "No," Helena said. "You saw plated copies. The substitutions have been happening for months." She turned over one silver cup. Beneath its base was the small triangular repair mark used by her father. "This piece passed through my workshop last winter. Bellamy reported that it had been returned to the dining collection." Alistair faced the guards. "Unload every crate." The guard leader withdrew a folded document. "You authorized transfer of the Hartmere collection and associated valuables. My men took possession the moment Captain Rowe accepted your signed order. I revoke it. The wagons now carry property pledged against your debts to Lord Crofton. I have no such debt. Bellamy emerged from the shadows carrying a thick account book. You do, Your Grace. He opened it to a page bearing Alistair's signature. 6 weeks earlier, Alistair had signed what Bellamy described as a temporary guarantee for exhibition expenses. The document before him had additional clauses written upon a second sheet, joined beneath the same ribbon and seal. It pledged Hartmere's movable property as security. Helena understood the method immediately. The eyelets, she said. Alistair looked at her. The original document had 4 ribbon holes. This one has 6. Bellamy removed the final sheet and attached different terms after you signed. The guard leader smiled. That may be argued in court. Until then, the pledge stands. Alistair reached for the document, but the armed men closed around it. His title could command servants, but it could not instantly defeat his own signature, carried by men claiming a creditor's authority. If he ordered violence, Crofton would portray him as an indebted noble attacking lawful agents. The consequence of his choice had become larger than the sapphire. Because he had excluded Helena from the collection, Bellamy had replaced the valuables. Because he had trusted Crofton, he had signed the altered guarantee. Because he had arrested his wife and transferred authority tonight, the thieves could now leave Hartmere openly. Hooves thundered beyond the gate. A second wagon entered the courtyard carrying 2 government officers and the royal messenger. One officer unfolded a warrant. Alistair Wycliffe, Duke of Hartmere, by order of the Treasury, your collection and private accounts are seized pending investigation into the disappearance of objects loaned to the Crown. Alistair's cabinet appointment vanished in the space between one breath and the next. The officer turned to Helena. You are Lady Helena Wycliffe. I am. Mr. Alderton informed us that you maintained the only complete technical inventory of the Hartmere collection. Where is it? Part survived the fire. Then the Crown requires your assistance. Alistair stepped toward her. Helena, you must explain the substitutions. She met his gaze without softness. I will protect the Crown's property and the servants whose livelihoods you endangered. I will not protect your reputation, and I will work under Captain Rowe's guard, not yours. He looked as though he wished to object. Instead, he lowered his head. Agreed. A stable boy ran into the courtyard, breathless and bleeding from one temple. The White Hart Inn is empty, he gasped. The other wagons left for Blackwall an hour ago. Mrs. Finch's second messenger was followed. Helena looked toward the paling eastern sky. The ship would sail at 6. Blackwall was nearly 2 hours away by ordinary carriage. On wet roads, they had less than 20 minutes to spare, and Verena was no longer standing beside the Duke. Helena searched the courtyard once before accepting what she already knew. Verena's ivory cloak was gone. So was the small black carriage she had used upon arriving at Hartmere. She left through the north gate, Lucy said, hurrying from the servants' passage. Mr. Pike drove her. Alistair turned toward Captain Rowe. Send riders after them. No, Helena said. She expects pursuit on the London road. The ship sails in less than 2 hours. And she cannot reach Blackwall before us, unless the cargo is already much closer to the river. Helena unfolded the loading list. A faint brown crescent stained its lower edge. She rubbed it carefully between 2 fingers and smelled roasted grain. Malt dust. Alistair frowned. From the White Hart Inn? The inn does not brew, but Crofton owns an abandoned malt warehouse beside the Lee Navigation. Barges can travel from there to Blackwall without using the main road. The government officer, Mr. Harcourt, studied her. How do you know Crofton's properties? I examined his proposed investment contracts for my husband last year. I advised against them. Alistair's face tightened. Bellamy told me the recommendation was his. Bellamy copied my figures after you stopped reading reports carrying my name. Helena did not wait for his answer. She requested 4 fast horses, Captain Rowe, Mr. Harcourt, and 2 armed officers. When Alistair moved toward the carriage, she blocked the door. You agreed that I would work under the Crown's authority. I can identify Crofton's agents. You can also order Captain Rowe to obey you when fear defeats your judgment. The words wounded him because they were accurate. "What do you require?" he asked. "Sit opposite me. Speak only when asked. If we recover anything, you will not touch it or claim it as Hartmere property until Mr. Harcourt records it." Once, Helena would have softened such conditions to preserve his dignity. That instinct no longer governed her. Alistair entered without argument. For several minutes, only the wheels and the horses broke the silence inside the carriage. Alistair sat opposite Helena, his soot-stained coat folded across one knee. There had been a time when she could read every change in his face. Now she recognized only the effort with which he avoided looking at her bare hand. "You removed your ring," he said at last. "You noticed that more quickly than you noticed my innocence." The carriage jolted. His hand moved instinctively to steady her, then stopped before touching her. "I thought you had grown ashamed of me," he said. Helena stared at him. "So you chose a woman who never contradicted you." "Verena made me feel that I was still the man I had been before the debts, before Parliament, before every room seemed to contain someone waiting for me to fail." "And what did I make you feel?" "The truth." His answer came without defense. Helena looked through the rain-streaked window. "I spent 6 years preventing this estate from failing because I believed we were protecting it together. Each time you accepted Bellamy's praise for my work, I told myself the truth would eventually matter more than your pride." Alistair lowered his eyes. "When did you stop believing that?" "When you removed my coronet without asking whether I was innocent." The words left no place for him to hide. "I cannot undo that," he said. "No, and helping me recover the sapphire will not purchase forgiveness." "I know." She finally looked at him. "No, Alistair, you are only beginning to know." The carriage continued toward the river, carrying them side by side but no longer together. They reached the Leah warehouse as dawn silvered the river. One loading door stood open. Fresh wheel ruts ended beside the water, where an empty mooring rope slapped against the stone. "The barge has gone," Captain Rowe said. Helena walked among the abandoned crates. Most contained plaster, coloured glass, and cheap metal copies made to resemble Hartmere valuables from a distance. Upon a work table lay moulds taken from silver cups, wax impressions of seals, and fragments of blue glass. Mr. Harcourt began cataloguing each object. Helena found the stolen tool's leather case beneath a pile of packing straw. The green cord around its handle matched the lifter taken from Bellamy. Inside the lid, Mr. Alderton's initials had been cut through and replaced with a small crescent. "The same crescent upon the false key," she said. Captain Rowe placed the case inside an evidence bag and sealed it in Mr. Harcourt's presence. Near the river door, Helena discovered a ledger page impaled upon a splinter. It listed the substituted objects, the dates they had left Hartmere, and coded initials beside each payment. She did not pull it free. "Mr. Harcourt, record its position before anyone moves it." He marked the location, called Captain Rowe as witness, and removed the page with clean forceps. The chain of custody was now beyond Alistair's household and beyond Crofton's influence. One entry stopped Helena's breath. "HS, Blue Heart, delivered 6 weeks ago. The true sapphire left Hartmere before I was forbidden to inspect the collection," she said. "My exclusion concealed a theft that had already occurred." Alistair read the date. "That was the day after you asked me to dismiss Bellamy, and you accused me of resenting his authority." "I remember." For the first time, he did not defend himself. Helena traced the remaining entries without touching the page. Each valuable object had been replaced shortly after she submitted a warning: unpaid pensions, false repair costs, unexplained insurance charges. Bellamy had taken her discoveries, credited himself with correcting them, and used Alistair's praise to strengthen his access. "You saved Hartmere repeatedly," Alistair said. "I did my duty, and I allowed him to make me believe your work was his. You allowed it because gratitude toward a steward cost less than respect for a wife who contradicted you." He absorbed the words in silence. Captain Rowe found a narrow door leading to a rear office. Inside, Lucy's missing wage card lay beside Helena's stolen stationery, and a sheet covered with practice signatures. Mr. Harcourt sealed them together. "This proves the letters were forged here," Alistair said. "It proves someone practiced her signature here," Harcourt corrected. "We still need to connect the workshop to Verena, Crofton, or Bellamy." Helena examined the desk. A shipping label had been pressed against wet ink, leaving a reversed impression upon the blotting paper. Her father had shown her the same effect when merchants reused their correspondence pads. She angled a mirror beside it and read the reflected words. Vesper, Pier 7, Blackwall. Below the ship's name appeared a crate number, 12. "The sapphire is not with the other objects," she said. "It is inside the final crate." "How can you know?" Alistair asked. "Because every entry lists a weight. Crate 12 is 32 pounds heavier than its declared contents. The inner box must be lead-lined to defeat a customs inspector's testing needle." Mr. Harcourt stared at her. "Can we intercept the vessel?" "The tide turns in 40 minutes. A river patrol waited less than a mile downstream. Mr. Harcourt dispatched an officer with the ship's name and ordered the Vesper detained before it reached the Thames. For the first time since her coronet had been removed, Helena felt the scheme begin to yield beneath her hands. She had a base of action outside her husband's control, independent witnesses, and proof that no household servant could quietly destroy. Then Captain Rowe called from the river door. A boy of perhaps 14 lay unconscious behind the empty barrels. He wore the blue cap of an apprentice jeweller. Helena knelt beside him and recognized Thomas Reed, Mr. Alderton's youngest assistant. "You carried Alderton's postponed travel letter to me yesterday." Thomas opened his eyes. "Lady Helena," he whispered, "I saw the sapphire." "Where?" "In Lady Verena's hand. She made Mr. Alderton cut a copy, but he refused to mark it as genuine. They took him onto the barge." Helena felt the fragile hope vanish. "Is Mr. Alderton aboard the Vesper?" Thomas shook his head weakly. "Lady Verena moved him to another boat. She said if the patrol stopped the Vesper, he would be exchanged for the ledger page." Mr. Harcourt reached for the sealed evidence bag. A gunshot cracked from the warehouse roof. The window shattered, and the bag containing the ledger page disappeared through the broken glass on a hooked line. Outside, Verena's black carriage was waiting on the opposite bank. She held a pistol in one hand and the stolen evidence in the other. "Bring me Helena," she called across the water, "or the only man who can prove which sapphire is real will drown before the tide turns." Helena stepped toward the river door. Alistair seized her wrist. "You are not crossing to her. She has Mr. Alderton, and she will take you as well." Helena looked at his hand until he released her. "You forfeited the right to decide which risks I may take." Mr. Harcourt raised a warning finger. "Lady Helena, we cannot surrender a Crown witness." "Then do not surrender me. Make Verena believe you have." Helena asked Thomas to describe the second boat. It was a narrow black lighter with a canvas-covered cabin and a brass lantern fixed to the bow. The boy had heard water beneath Alderton's chair, suggesting the jeweller was being held below the main deck. Captain Rowe positioned 2 officers downstream. Harcourt concealed another inside a fisherman's skiff. Helena then entered a small ferry alone, carrying an empty evidence bag wrapped around a bundle of warehouse paper. Verena waited beside the black carriage on the opposite bank. "Throw me the ledger," Helena called. "Come ashore first. Show me Alderton." Verena gestured toward the nearby lighter. Pike dragged the elderly jeweller onto its deck. His hands were bound, and blood darkened one side of his collar. "He is alive," Verena said. "Whether he remains so depends upon you." Helena guided the ferry against the landing steps. As Pike reached for her, Captain Rowe's hidden officer rose from beneath a tarpaulin and struck him behind the knees. Chaos erupted. Helena caught Alderton as he fell from the lighter. Captain Rowe fired toward Verena's pistol, knocking it from her hand. Harcourt's men surged onto the bank, but Verena had prepared for failure. She pulled a cord concealed beneath her cloak. Flame raced along an oil-soaked rope to the lighter. "Move!" Helena shouted. Alistair, who had ignored her order to remain behind, leaped from the ferry and dragged Alderton toward the stones. The lighter exploded seconds later. Burning fragments rained across the river, and the stolen ledger page vanished into the flames. Verena's carriage thundered away before the officers could reach it. Pike escaped in the confusion, leaving only his torn coat upon the landing. They had saved Alderton, but Helena's strongest link between the substitutions and Crofton's network had been destroyed. The jeweler could barely stand. "Where is the true sapphire?" Helena asked. Alderton's lips trembled. "Verena forced me to cut a copy from blue spinel. When I refused to certify it, she threatened Thomas. The real Hartmere stone was not with her." "Who took it?" "I never saw his face. He wore Crofton's ring, but Verena called him only the buyer." That testimony proved Verena's part in manufacturing the imitation. It did not prove she had stolen the original, forged Helena's letters, or ordered the collection shipped abroad. By the time they returned to Hartmere, Lord Crofton had already acted. Carriages crowded the front drive. Magistrates, creditors, newspaper printers, and invited noblemen filled the great gallery where Helena had been accused hours earlier. Crofton stood beneath the Hartmere coat of arms, with Bellamy beside him. Verena had entered through another gate and changed into an unmarked travelling gown. There was no soot upon her hands, no ledger page in her possession, and no weapon that could be connected to the river. She faced the room with tears upon her cheeks. Lady Helena abducted Mr. Alderton after he discovered her imitation sapphire, Verena announced. She then burned the warehouse containing proof of her sales. Alderton tried to object, but Crofton produced a physician's statement declaring him confused following a head injury. Bellamy presented the forged letters, the broker's receipt, and the jewel cases found inside Helena's trunk. Each item told the same false story. Then Crofton raised Alistair's signed arrest order. The Duke of Hartmere himself examined the evidence and identified his wife as the thief. Silence settled over the gallery. Every mistake Alistair had made now stood in Verena's defense. Helena watched him understand that his public cruelty had become the scheme's strongest evidence. Crofton turned to the magistrate. "Lady Helena must be detained before she destroys anything else." Alistair stepped in front of her. "No." Crofton's brows lifted. "You signed the charge." "I did." "You declared her guilty before witnesses." "I did that as well." "Then stand aside." Alistair faced the guests who had watched him remove Helena's coronet. "My accusation was made without a proper examination. I ignored my wife's warnings, transferred authority to people she had questioned, and signed an order that enabled the Hartmere collection to be removed. If there is negligence, it is mine. If the Crown requires an arrest, begin with me." The admission cost him immediately. Mr. Harcourt ordered the Duke's seal surrendered. The Treasury confirmed that Hartmere's accounts would remain frozen. Crofton publicly withdrew support for Alistair's government appointment. Alistair lost his political future, financial authority, and control of the investigation in the room where he had tried to preserve them. But his truth did not clear Helena. The magistrate ordered her confined at Hartmere until a formal hearing the following afternoon. Verena was permitted to remain free because no surviving document directly placed her in the warehouse or aboard the lighter. As Helena was escorted away, Verena approached. "You should have accepted exile," she whispered. "Tomorrow, Alderton's damaged memory will fail. Your servants will be called dependents, and your husband's confession will make him appear merely desperate to save you." Helena's gaze dropped to Verena's bare hands. The crescent ring she had worn since arriving at Hartmere was gone. The same crescent had appeared upon the false workshop key and Alderton's stolen tool case. Yet a symbol could be copied. Then Helena remembered the blue residue inside the empty setting, and Alderton's words. He had cut the replacement from blue spinel. Spinel was harder than ordinary glass. It could not have left the powder Helena discovered beneath the claw. There had been 2 false stones. One imitation had been removed before the royal exhibition. Another had been made afterward to deceive the buyer. Verena believed only one copy existed. Helena stopped walking. "Captain Rowe, Ask Mr. Harcourt to preserve every fragment recovered from the exploded lighter, then send a message to the Royal Jewellers Guild. What message? Tell them Lady Verena will authenticate the Hartmere Sapphire tomorrow. Across the gallery, Verena's confident expression faltered. Helena finally understood how to defeat her. She would not ask Verena to confess. She would force her to identify a stone she could not possibly know was false. Before sunrise, Helena turned her confinement into a place of preparation. She asked Captain Rowe to station separate guards beside Alderton, Thomas, Lucy, and Mrs. Finch. None of them was permitted to speak with Bellamy, Crofton, or Verena before the hearing. Mr. Harcourt sealed every surviving object in numbered bags: the false key, Alderton's stone lifter, the Red Stag matchbox, the practice signatures, Lucy's wage card, the forged letters, and the fragments recovered from the burned lighter. Helena requested one final item from her father's iron box: a plain brass balance with ivory measuring pans. Alistair delivered it himself. For several seconds, they stood alone in the schoolroom. "I told Harcourt every order I signed," he said, "including the guarantee Bellamy altered. That was necessary. I also gave him the letters in which Crofton promised me the cabinet appointment." Helena looked at him. Those letters proved why Alistair had favoured Crofton's recommendations and distrusted anyone who threatened the alliance. Surrendering them ended his political ambitions permanently. "Truth offered only after ruin is still truth," she said, "but it does not erase the choice that caused the ruin." "I know." He placed the balance upon the table and left without asking her to forgive him. The formal hearing began at noon in the Great Gallery. The same guests who had witnessed Helena's humiliation now sat behind magistrates, treasury officers, jewellers, and representatives of the Crown. This time, Helena entered without a coronet, but no guard touched her. Verena attacked first. She described herself as a loyal family friend who had discovered Helena's secret sales. Bellamy swore Helena had repeatedly demanded private access to the collection. Crofton presented the Duke's signed accusation and claimed the warehouse belonged to a company he had sold years earlier. The Duchess possessed the knowledge, keys, and motive, Crofton concluded. Hartmere's debts threatened her mother's support. She stole the sapphire, replaced it, and set fire to her workshop when discovery became inevitable. The story was coherent. Helena waited until the magistrate asked whether she wished to respond. "Lady Verena," she began, "when did you first see the Hartmere Sapphire outside its setting?" Verena folded her hands. "3 weeks ago, when I discovered Helena examining it privately." "And what did it look like?" "A deep blue oval stone with a small white feather near its lower edge." Alderton shifted in his chair. Helena continued, "You are certain of the white feather?" "I could not forget it." The magistrate recorded her answer. Helena then laid out the timeline. 6 weeks earlier, Bellamy entered the jewel chamber under Mrs. Finch's supervision. The following day, Alistair, at Bellamy and Verena's urging, excluded Helena from further inspections. 3 weeks later, Verena claimed to have seen Helena holding the loose stone, although the jewel room access book showed no lawful entry by Helena during that period. Bellamy protested that pages had been removed from the book. "Yes," Helena said, "after the fire, but Mrs. Finch witnessed your original visit, and the workshop practice sheet proves someone copied my signature from Lucy's wage card." Crofton rose. "It proves no connection to my clients." Helena held up the Red Stag matchbox. "This was found beside my true workshop key. The White Hart innkeeper has provided a guest register showing Mr. Pike rented the rear yard under Bellamy's authorization. The inn's stable boy identified the wagons now held by the Treasury. Pike's torn coat had been recovered at the river. Inside its lining, Harcourt found receipts from the same London broker named in Helena's forged letters. Each document was ordinary. Together, their custody formed a path no single denial could break. Helena turned to Alistair. "Who ordered me excluded from the collection?" "I did." "Who recommended that decision?" "Bellamy and Lady Verena." "Who signed the transfer allowing Crofton's men to take the crates?" I did. Did I ask you to wait for Mr. Alderton? You did. And did you refuse? Alistair's voice carried across the gallery. Yes. Helena faced the magistrates. The theft succeeded because my husband publicly discredited the person capable of detecting it, then gave authority to those who required my silence. His signature does not prove my guilt. It proves the opportunity he gave them. No one looked at Alistair. That was its own judgment. Helena placed the empty gold setting beneath a magnifying lens. Alderton explained that the oldest scratch had been polished over, proving the stone had been removed and replaced before the final 2 scratches were made. The residue beneath the claw was blue glass, Helena said. Yet Mr. Alderton testified that Verena forced him to cut a later imitation from blue spinel. She placed 2 stones upon the black velvet. They appeared nearly identical, 1 blue glass, 1 blue spinel. The conspiracy required 2 substitutes. The first allowed the true sapphire to leave Hartmere unnoticed. The second was prepared for a foreign buyer who might test ordinary glass. Verena smiled. A clever theory, but neither stone proves I ever touched the necklace. No, Helena agreed. Your knowledge does. She asked Mr. Harcourt to display the fragments recovered from the burned lighter. Among them was a scorched lead box containing a blue oval gem. Crofton immediately stood. That is the Hartmere Sapphire. It must be returned to its lawful owner. Helena looked toward Verena. Do you agree? Verena studied the stone from across the room. Yes. The white feather near the lower edge proves it. And you are prepared to swear that this is the same stone you saw in my hands 3 weeks ago? I am. The magistrate administered the oath. Verena repeated her identification without hesitation. Helena then invited 3 jewelers from the Royal Guild to approach. Each examined the stone independently while the gallery waited. The first jeweler recorded his conclusion and folded the paper. The second did the same. Alderton inspected it last. His bruised hands were steady as he placed the stone upon Helena's brass balance. The left measuring pan descended. Alderton looked at Helena, then toward the magistrates. My lords, he said, Lady Verena has just sworn to an impossibility. He reached for the sealed guild certificate. Alderton broke the guild seal. This stone is blue spinel, he said. I cut it yesterday under threat. The white feather Lady Verena described is not a natural inclusion. It is a shallow mark I placed beneath the surface so I could identify my own work. A magistrate leaned forward. Then, could Lady Verena have seen this stone 3 weeks ago? No, my lord. 3 weeks ago, it did not exist. Silence moved through the gallery before shock replaced it. Verena glanced toward the doors. Captain Rowe closed them. Helena lifted the scorched spinel with jeweler's tongs. Lady Verena knew about the white feather because she watched Mr. Alderton create it. She mistook this later copy for the glass substitute she had seen removed from the Hartmere setting. Crofton rose abruptly. One mistaken description proves nothing against me. Mr. Harcourt entered with a river officer before Helena could answer. The Vesper was detained below Blackwall, Harcourt announced. Crate 12 contained the Hartmere Sapphire inside a lead-lined box, together with 31 stolen objects and Lord Crofton's private shipping accounts. He placed the true sapphire upon the black velvet. Its blue fire filled the empty setting's shadow. There was no white feather inside it. Verena's oath had identified a false stone only someone within the conspiracy could recognize. Bellamy attempted to flee. Captain Rowe caught him before he reached the side door, and the remaining structure of the scheme collapsed beneath questioning. Who removed the true sapphire? The magistrate asked. Bellamy's eyes moved toward Crofton. Answer, Harcourt ordered. I did, Bellamy said. Lady Helena kept discovering irregular payments. His lordship said she had to be removed from the collection before she examined the sapphire. Why replace it with glass? To conceal the first theft until Alderton's inspection was announced. And why remove the glass later? Verena's voice cut across the room. Do not say another word. Bellamy laughed bitterly. You promised I would manage Hartmere after she was imprisoned. The magistrate turned to Verena. What part did you play? Helena answered through evidence rather than accusation. Verena had persuaded Alistair that Helena's inspections embarrassed the family. She had taken one of Lucy's emergency wage cards from Bellamy's office and used Helena's hurried signature as a model. Lavender oil from Verena's gloves remained upon the forged confession. Her red wax sealed the Blackwall order, while her missing crescent ring matched the marks placed on copied keys and stolen tools. The crescent itself was found inside Pike's torn coat. Crofton had financed the operation and provided buyers abroad. Bellamy controlled the keys, accounts and servants. Pike moved trunks and crates through the White Hart Inn. Verena entered Helena's sitting room, stole her stationery, and planted the first forged receipt. When the royal inspection threatened to expose the glass substitute, they removed it and accused Helena before witnesses. Her public humiliation was not merely revenge. It was the final distraction needed to transfer the entire collection under Alistair's signed authority. Crofton looked toward the Duke. You believed every word. Alistair rose. I did, he said, because Bellamy flattered my judgment, because you offered me office, and because Verena made my wife's intelligence feel like disobedience. But deception does not excuse what I chose. His gaze found Helena. She asked me to compare the signatures. I refused. She asked me to wait for Alderton. I refused. She warned me not to transfer the collection, and I signed the order anyway. Before this room, I accused an innocent woman because preserving my pride mattered more to me than protecting her name. No one could mistake the admission for a plea of innocence. The magistrates ordered Crofton detained for conspiracy, receiving stolen property, fraud, and attempted unlawful export. His shipping accounts exposed buyers and intermediaries at 3 ports. His political offices were suspended pending prosecution. Verena was arrested for forgery, theft, perjury, arson, kidnapping, and conspiracy. When Captain Rowe removed the late Duchess's pearls from her throat, she finally looked toward Alistair for rescue. He did not move. Bellamy faced charges for fraud, theft, document alteration, and attempted destruction of evidence. His assets were seized to repay the tenant pensions and stolen wages. Pike was captured before nightfall at a riverside stable while carrying Crofton's payment. Lucy received every penny withheld from her. Mrs. Finch was formally recognized as a Crown witness, rather than dismissed as an unreliable servant. Alderton and Thomas returned safely to London under protection. Then the magistrate faced Helena. Lady Hartmere, the accusation against you is withdrawn. The record will state that your expertise recovered the Crown's property and exposed the conspiracy. Helena did not look at her husband. Let the correction be published wherever the accusation was reported. It will be. The Crown appointed Helena to supervise the authentication of recovered royal and aristocratic collections. Her father's workshop records became the foundation of a permanent conservation office in London, employing apprentices chosen for ability rather than birth. Alistair made no attempt to retain control over her work. Before the same guests who had watched him remove her coronet, he read a complete public retraction. He restored her suspended allowance, repaid the money she had spent protecting Hartmere's tenants, transferred the unentailed London house into a trust for her sole use, and agreed to a legal separation with independent maintenance. The Treasury placed Hartmere's finances under trusteeship for 5 years. Alistair lost his cabinet appointment, authority over the collection, and the unquestioned loyalty of the wife whose judgment had preserved his house. Weeks later, he came to Helena's London workshop, carrying her wedding ring in a small wooden box. I will not ask you to return, he said. I came to give back what I treated as mine to take. Helena looked at the ring but did not touch it. What we had was not false, he continued, but I made it unsafe. I understand why remorse cannot restore it. For the first time, he offered truth without demanding reward. I hope you become a better man, Helena said, but I will not spend my life waiting to discover whether you do. He bowed and left the box upon the table. The following morning, the Hartmere Sapphire arrived under royal guard for Helena's final inspection. In the great gallery, Men had removed her coronet, while an empty setting lay before her. Now, inside a workshop bearing her own name, 3 crown officers waited for her judgment. Helena examined the sapphire, documented every mark, and secured it inside its restored setting. Then she took her wedding ring from the wooden box. She did not place it upon her finger. She melted the gold, drew it into a fine protective rim, and used it to frame the brass nameplate her father had once hung above his modest shop. Helena Vale, jeweler and conservator. She fastened the plate above her own door, turned the key, and opened the workshop to the morning light.